Okay, James said his expectation is insightful ways of promoting quality education in Africa. Wow. Yes, that's good. Okay. Jeremiah said he's waiting to be impacted. Wow. Wow. From Ogun State, Nigeria. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Yes. I'm so impressed with your responses today. Okay. Naomi from Tanzania. It's my pleasure joining this workshop series. Thank you for joining. I'm so happy to have you here too. Okay, I have someone, Ayobami Oyeniran said, I'm expecting to get an insightful thought and action towards our education in Africa. Yeah, wow, that's awesome, powerful. I love everyone's expectation. Prince Oji said, my expectations are to gain practical insight on how to promote a sustainable education. Bravo. And I know you are going to meet your expectations this evening. Thank you all for joining. Thank you. I will like to proceed to the next thing on the agenda because of our time. Yes. Thank you. So without further ado, I will be introducing our panelists. Each of them brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion. It's my pleasure to introduce one of the esteemed panelists for today. The first panelist I'll be introducing is Mr. James Mugalia. James Mugalia is an education researcher and educator from Makerere University. He also worked with Voluntary Action for Development, an NGO in Uganda, as a program director from 2018 to 2021. He is currently the founder and CEO of Divine Touch Children Ministries, an NGO in Uganda working on community development. Mr. James Mugalia, you're welcome. Please, let's celebrate Mr. James Mugalia with our virtual claps. I'm waiting. Please, let's celebrate and thank you for joining our workshop series today.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, for this opportunity and having me here right at this time. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, Mr. James, I have a question for you. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So my question goes thus. What are the most effective ways to support teacher professional development and well-being in Africa education system, particularly in resource-constrained contexts, to enhance teacher motivations, retention, and effectiveness? Kindly share your thought on this question, sir. Over to you.
Thank you very much once again, Madam Moderator, for this beautiful session, Thank you very much once again for this beautiful question. And the issue is about sharing how best. The issue is sharing how best we can promote teacher professional development and well-being in Africa. And there are a lot of questions which surround this topic. And my first question before I go down to answering the question is, will the rapid emerging technology replace the classroom teacher? Of course, the answer is no, it will not replace. We need teachers. Then if we need teachers, what is the way forward? We need to motivate them. We need to arouse their interest to see that they do what they are supposed to do. They implement the curriculum that we want them to implement. Now, how do we do this? It is a collective effort from individuals, from private sectors, as well as government entities to see that we join hands and we promote inclusive and quality education in Africa. Now, let's first look at the setup of the schools where these teachers are working from. What are the schools supposed to do to see that these teachers do the work perfectly and the way we expect them to do? These are some of the ways that schools can help us to motivate these teachers in financially constrained situations to see that we push on with quality education. One, workload management. When I talk about workload management, how many disciplines is one teacher handling and in how many classes? When you give the manageable and realistic workload, it will help these teachers to achieve the set competences. Number two, we look at professional development opportunities. You see, as I've earlier told you, that there is a lot of emerging technology, and these teachers need to upgrade on their skills, values, and then to achieve the set competencies, really to teach our children what they must learn in the current situation. So we need to offer them professional development opportunities through scholarships and then workshops. It will help them to enhance the skills and then the values we need them to transfer to our learners. Number three, advancing. Number three, there is what we call a supportive leadership and communication. These teachers, they need transparent and effective leaders to lead them to achieve quality education in our learners that we need. We need also leaders who are good at communicating, leaders who can communicate and influence these teachers to do well in their respective schools where they work from. Then there is also another one which is about offering guidance and counseling sessions to these teachers. Teachers are also human beings like us. They face a lot of challenges. They need guidance and counseling. Why do we guide and counsel them? Simply, we need them to understand the work-life balance technique. We need also to equip them with the skills and the values of stress regulation. How do they regulate stress alongside the heavy work that they are doing? Then also the self-care techniques. They need to know how do they care for themselves alongside performing the heavy duty of grooming our generations. Then there is also promoting positive school culture. We expect schools to create conducive working environments, whereby these environments will motivate these teachers to work very well and work at their best so that the competencies set are achieved. Then last but not least, motivating and rewarding teachers. There is a program in Uganda which is ongoing. I don't know in other countries, but the Ireland Embassy awards those best performing teachers in our country. What is the intent behind? The intent is to arouse the interest of others so that they can also copy the very example and implement the curriculum the way we expect it to be implemented. So mental health care resources, I've already talked about it. I've said that these teachers need the guidance and the counseling to see that they do their jobs with ease without any stress. Thank you very much for now. Let me stop there. Thank you once again, moderator. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. What I can take from it, though, for what you said is we need to prioritize teachers' well-being, provide professional development, and a conducive learning environment for the learners. Thank you so much for sharing, Mr. James. So now I would like to introduce the second panelist we'll be having for today's workshop series, the person of Ms. Mutiat Dosumu. Please let's welcome her with our virtual club. Mutiat Dosumu is an award-winning social entrepreneur, the founder of FarmBite, a program coach, and a business enthusiast. With a zeal for community sustainability and entrepreneurship education, she mentors on skill discovery, healthy lifestyle, women empowerment, SDGs education, and business management, and holds various postgraduate degrees in quality management, entrepreneurship, and business management. She's also the founder of Future Careers and Empowerment Initiative, a community dedicated to entrepreneurship, sustainability practice, social inclusion, SDGs, and educational equity in schools. I'll welcome Ms. Mutia Dosumu. Please, let's celebrate her. Let's welcome her. Thank you. Ms. Mutia Dosumu, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for joining. Thank you.
So thank you so much for having me. So according to the question, let me just go straight. So before we even talk about the importance of education, I want to talk about the equitable, since we are talking about the inclusiveness, the equitable, sustainable education for today. How equitable is our educational system in the first place before we talk about the importance of the technology? So as our case study for today, which is the rural community or the undeserved community, do we have these equitable access, equitable allocations, equitable distributions of this technology in the first place for us to understand the importance, for us to understand the effectiveness of this technology? So that's the first place, because we noticed that, okay, I think the urban people have more access, they have more rights for these skills, they have more rights for digital skills, they have more accessibility for digital skills, which is not supposed to be. So first thing is to, first of all, talk about these equitable assets. Do we have these equitable assets? Okay, once we have these equitable assets, maybe through the government funds, maybe through the government support, maybe through the collaborations or partnerships of the communities, once they have these supports, do we have this support system? Do we have these resources? Do we have these toolkits? That's the first thing we are going to say. And the next thing is the training and development. After this support system, do we have this training and development to leverage educational system through this technology? That's another main important thing. So once we have this educational system in place and we have this technology, we have the main support system, the main skills, the main digital inclusiveness to improve these skills. So the next one after that is social exclusion, which is like some of what I said before. The social exclusion is something that we need to talk about because digital, we are all in the digital era now, but social exclusion is one of the most important and one of the most challenges we are facing in order to leverage technology. But once we have all this in place, eradication of social exclusion, support system, infrastructures, and the likes, once we have all these important aspects in place, then we can bring in we can make use of this technology by what? By increasing the learning system, the learning experience for those in the rural community, by giving access to information, because this is what the rural community really lacks. They lack so much access to information, and this is due to lack of digital inclusiveness. This is due to lack of technology in this area. So for them to be aware of what is even going on in the global world, what the challenges people are facing, it takes so much time. So with this technology in place, with this digital inclusiveness in place, learning system, learning experience, learning performance will surely increase in our educational system, and it will eradicate any form of social exclusion, educational poverty, and improve social solidarity. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much. As we all know, we are in the 21st century and we need to introduce digital world to our education system, either the urban or the rural areas. You don't have to segregate. You have to just make sure that it circulates all around the areas we have in the continent, in Africa at large. Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks for that insightful perspective. Okay, I'll be moving to the third panelist we have for this workshop series, the person of Mr. Francis Kitivar. Mr. Francis Kitivar is an educationist, a teacher at Magadi Soda School, Kenya, a researcher on education system, and a student at Kenyatta University, taking comparative education and international studies. Mr. Francis, you're welcome. Please let's celebrate Mr. Francis.
Thank you, moderator. I think I'm very clear and you are getting me loud and clear over there.
Yes, you can get it. So I have a question for you, Mr. Francis. Are you ready to hear my question?
Yes.
All right. So, Mr. Francis, what policies and partnerships are necessary to ensure that education is contextualized to address the unique needs and challenges of African communities, promoting relevance, cultural sensitivity, and sustainable development? Kindly share your thoughts on this, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to say that in Africa, we are facing so many challenges touching on poverty, touching on infrastructure, among other challenges and needs in Africa. And therefore, I'm here this particular evening coming up with policies that are going to make sure everything is in order and the kind of partnership that we need to engage in. We need to come up with the evidence-based policies, one of them being developing education policies tailored to local context, languages, and cultural practices, because this one ensures relevancy and meaningful learning experiences. Another way is to ensure policies accommodate diverse backgrounds in terms of religion, ethnic, and socio-economic status of learners, abilities, and also learning styles. These learning styles include visual, auditory, and also kinesthetic. Policies should also address resource disparities by ensuring all regions, including the rural areas, have access to a quality education. The policy also need to equip teachers with effective teaching methods that cater to different learning needs of learners. This one enhances classroom engagement and the participation of learners. We should also promote digital skills among teachers and the students by enhancing ICT capabilities. Another policy, we should also incorporate local knowledge, history, and languages in curricula to foster cultural pride and relevance, because we understand that when a learner is taught using the local languages, they usually understand better. The last point on the policies is that we need to include practical skills relevant to sustainable development, such as agriculture. We know the methods of agriculture, for example, crop rotation, and the good farming methods, and also entrepreneurship to empower students as they take their academic journey. Having checked on the policy that we need to come up with as Africans, we also need to partner with different groups of people. One, we need to work with the local communities, parents, and the traditional leaders to align education with cultural values and needs. We need also to partner with non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, and religious institutions to provide valuable insights and support. And the last point on partnership, we need to engage businesses to invest in educational infrastructure, technology, and vocational training, because we understand that what our teachers are lacking is skills on how to deliver the curricula in the best way. Having said that, I would like to say thank you, Madam Moderator.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, those policies are very, very important if you want to increase the quality of education in Africa, and it's very, very important. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you to all our wonderful panelists for sharing your thoughts on those questions I've asked you so far. It's wonderful to have you here on this workshop series. I believe our panelists has watered the ground for our speaker. Over to you, Ms. Kehinde Obafemi.
Hello, everyone. I hope we are enjoying the session. Good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to our workshop series. I hope you can all hear me.
Yes, loud and clear. Please proceed.
Okay, apologies that my screen is not on. My environment is a bit noisy. So while we were talking, we had our amazing guest speaker come in, and in the person of Mr. Kasanga James. And before he takes over the mic, I would love to read a little about Mr. Kasanga. And I know that there will be so much to take home after we hear from all he'll be dishing out this evening. I want to know how we are excited about the next session for Mr. Kasanga. I want to see our comments on the chat box. I want to see our comments. I love how our panelists have been able to respond to our questions from our amazing moderator, Ms. Oluwakemi. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I'm so excited. And as we're doing that on the chat box, I would like to introduce who Mr. Kasanga is to us. Mr. Kasanga James is currently a senior advisor at Teach for All an Aspen Institute Global Innovator and co-founder and CEO Emeritus of Teach for Uganda, with extensive experience in global development spanning Africa, Southeast Asia, and United States. He's also the co-founder of Archie Healthcare, where his passion for equitable access to affordable healthcare continues to thrive as a chief strategy advisor with a profound belief that everything rises and falls with leadership. Wow, I totally agree with that. And I know you do too. He launched his own leadership firm, which is called the Madiba Leadership Collective, also known as MLC, where he launched his leadership, his leadership organization. And he has been doing that with his team, helping leaders and business to thrive with the interest that he can help young people and individuals. It will also interest you to know that Mr. Kasanga has authored numerous articles on education and leadership development. He holds master's degree in public health and policy from Florida State University and in sustainable development from STI Graduate Institute in Washington, D.C., an executive leadership certificate from Kennedy School. Wow, wow. I want to see how excited we are to hear from Mr. James on the chat box. Mr. James, thank you so much for honoring our invitation. Thank you so much. We'd like to hear from you from here. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you, Mr. Kasanga James. Thank you so much, sir. We are so glad that you are here with us.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jemima. Can you hear me, please? If you can do thumbs up, that would be great. Can you hear me? Fantastic. Thank you all so much. Thank you, our young Africans and young leaders, and even those who are older who are here. It's such a pleasure and the joy of this work, seeing the majority of young Africans really thinking about education. And so for me, it's an honor. Ms. Chidima, I don't know whether it was you or someone else. I want to see if I can share my my presentation so that if you don't mind, let me see, and allow me to see if I can share it. Can you all see it? I can see Mr. Kitiva, Mutai. Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Let me see if I can do the presenter view. Okay. Thank you all so much. If you can see it, thank you. So I was asked again to share about this incredible idea and also incredible challenge that we have about how do we provide sustainable and inclusive education in Africa. Thank you guys for thinking about this important topic. And then the other question I was asked by this wonderful group was, what's the way forward? You know, I put here a picture of a wonderful young people in Uganda, and I'm gonna share my story soon, but the joy and the energy that comes with education, especially when it's relevant. So first of all, who am I? And why am I here? Because I believe that before I share with you about the challenges, the potential solutions, and where you can come around, you gotta know who I am. I was born in a small village in rural southwestern Uganda called Kempungu in Kashari County, to a mother who was a primary school teacher and a father who was a peasant farmer. Allow me just a second so I can do my timing here. So I always like to time myself so that it's helpful to respect people's time. Yeah. So a father who was a peasant farmer, a mother who was a primary school teacher, dropped out of secondary school to be married off. As you know, in our cultures back then in 1980s when I was born, sometimes women were taken out of school to be married off early age. I'm sure you can know that. Most of you who have been in rural communities. She always had a passion for education. She always wanted to go to university and graduate, and she thought that she wanted to one day be a lawyer to take care of issues with policy that keep girls out of school. Long story short, by the age of 6 and 4, I lost my 3 siblings to measles, and then my mother to cancer, and my dad was suffering with HIV/AIDS by the time I was 10 years old. Unfortunately, he passed away before I turned 11, and I found the grandmother coming in, my paternal grandmother coming in to take care of us. Life was challenging, but I had an amazing teacher who sat and listened to me. Sometimes when I missed school, he would come to my home and visit. Teacher Amos would visit and say, but Kasaga, why do you miss school? And I would say, well, sometimes I have to, provide for Kaka, grandmother, and my brother who had dropped out of school so that we can have enough to eat. Sometimes I would go with only a sweet potato to school and a glass of milk. We had 2 cows that were remaining and a plot of land and a goat. At primary 7, some of you from Uganda would know the exams that come, the examination that determines whether you go to secondary school or not, does not discriminate between a rural child and a city child, a child who has money, resources, and a child who doesn't. And so the examinations came, we were all prepared. My school did not have even a center to sit at, friends. All my classmates and friends, about 20 of us, who had started out, by the way, like 100 in primary 1, we were now like 20, going to sit for this national exam. Several of them, 80% had dropped out. And so here we are going to sit this national exam, all of us barefooted. It would rain and would go through. I don't want to go through the entire story, but you get the picture. The exams came at the end of the results next year. I was the best in my county. Thank God. I was the best in my county with 7 aggregates. And I was admitted 7 aggregates out of 4, meaning that I missed only 3 to get a perfect score. The only thing that actually threw me off out of those 3 was English, because we could not speak English well because of the teachers and the challenges of not even being exposed to books. We rarely even had a library in my community. Long story short, got a scholarship from the secondary school where President Kagame and President Museveni had gone. But I could not afford to attend that secondary school. Guess what? Because I did not have boarding fees. My grandmother went with me. We walked barefooted to the school. We begged, and we couldn't be able to be allowed to attend school because I needed boarding fees equivalent of $130. You can translate what that means in your own country. My grandmother was distraught, feeling tired. The old woman had seen my brother drop out of school, and now could not see her heart, could not live with it to see her grandson, the youngest one, the remaining one, drop out. She went to her church community and said, can you help me send my boy to school? One gentleman stood up and said, the only person that can help your son, Kasaga Arenaitwe, is send him to the president of Uganda. By age 11, I found myself on a bus to rural Uganda at the 300 miles to see the president of my country. I spent 3 months surrounding his mansion and at the gate, and nobody could let me in. Finally, at Easter time, around April, he had come with helicopters and everyone, but every day he would go out of his gate. One day he saw this little boy at the gate and told the soldiers, why is that little boy always at the gate? And the soldiers said, he's here to see you. Someone sent him and he said he wants to go secondary school. He said, send him to the first lady. Someone brought me to the first lady after 3 months outside the presidential gate. Hungry, tired, about to give up. The first lady gave me my first scholarship to Kampala. I had missed the first term of school, and now I was leaving my village with no electricity, no light, nothing. Now to Kampala, where I was put in a secondary school with sons of doctors, businessmen, politicians, leaders, lawyers, and everyone. As a young man who English was fledgling and I couldn't speak well, I learned to lean into my friends, to learn from business leaders. In fact, one of my best friends was a son of a business tycoon in Kampala who actually was a chief engineer for the city. By the time the exams came of senior 6 to grade 6, I was among the best, and even I was the education minister for my school. Holidays came, and they said there's this volunteer program for Americans to help put solar panels in schools and rural villages. I rushed to be the volunteer. I applied because I knew very well, if you provided light in rural schools, in clinics, in homes, children like myself will have a great future. Because I knew very well it was not talent, neither was it skill that these kids were not making it. It was only opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, in that volunteership, I met Americans who saw my vision, who saw my potential, and gave me scholarship to attend Florida State University. Can you hear me? Am I still audible?
Yes, sir. You are.
We can hear you.
At Florida, I attended Florida State University. I hear someone in the background. Please mute so that move forward. I attended a community college in Tallahassee Community College, and finally I had applied to Harvard. Florida State gave me a full scholarship. Miss Charity, we are getting a background. Please, if you could mute. And so I ended up attending Florida State University, graduating among the best. And I went to work for President Jimmy Carter Center in Atlanta. My passion was to become a doctor one day so that I can revenge on the diseases that had affected my country. That's why you see that I'm still fighting global health issues. I studied public health with a passion, knowing that I wanted to go become a physician and honestly address the challenges of healthcare that had affected my family. Long story short, when I met President Jimmy Carter at the center, we were only about 27 of us from different countries. The only Africans were myself and a young man from Sudan. He looked at us and said, "You young men from Africa, what brings you here?" That is President Jimmy Carter, who is almost 100 now and is about to pass away. And I told him, I want to be a doctor, but because I know very well that many children in my country cannot become doctors because they lack the quality education that they need. He looked at me and said, "Young man, that is the vision that you hold. That is your purpose. Go and provide education to as many children as you can." At that time, I changed my career. I applied to Washington, D.C. to SIT Graduate Institute, School for International Training, to get a degree in sustainable development focused on international education and sustainable development. I graduated top class. I interned with the Global Health Corps in New York. I left to go to India to find out how do I launch an enterprise that gives every child an opportunity to succeed. By the end of 2015, we had launched Teach for Uganda. And by 2023, as I was stopping off, Teach for Uganda has been 190 school communities, have developed 500 young leaders across the country, and was actually being able to provide quality education for 75,000 children in Uganda. This journey of providing education for others, and we had raised at least in the last 8 years about $10 million, providing education to all these children, giving opportunities to some of our graduates who have come to Georgetown. Some are working at the UN, some are working across Africa, providing education as alumni of Teach for Uganda. That opportunity in 2017 brought me to face-to-face with President Bush, who invited me to speak at the Bush Leadership Inaugural Forum and the center in Washington, in Dallas, Texas. I had a conversation with President Bush, who sent a letter to my own president saying, support Mr. Kasaga to help launch more education opportunities for young people. I share that because I wanted you to know that only education could take a child of peasant farmers who was orphaned to be a leader that I have been able to become. So now that's my story. The challenge of education in Africa, I want to tell you, friends, I want to tell you, young leaders of Africa, partners, friends, champions, people who want to see education grow and transform millions of children on the continent and give the continent its right place in the world. It starts with education. But that education has to be quality, affordable, but also equitable. Why is it not so right now for especially rural children? It's because we lack the leaders. And I pray that among you all, you will develop to be the leaders who will make education equitable, affordable, and also provided for all children on the continent. Mandela said it, our great-grandfather said, education is the greatest engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant, the son of a peasant like myself, can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, the child of farm workers like my parents could become the president of a great nation. And he said that there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul. I love this quote, guys. I hope you listen. There can be no keener revelation of any society's soul anywhere in the world than the way it treats its children. My heart weeps when I travel across Uganda, when I travel across Kenya, some of Tanzania, and I still see our children sitting in, not maybe in Kenya, in Uganda, under mango trees. Mango trees. 200, today we have 200 children in one of the classrooms of Teach for Uganda, where we support, and they're sitting under mango trees. In the rainy season today, they cannot learn because it's so heavy that they are wet, their books are wet, they can't learn. Leaders of Africa, future leaders of policy, future leaders of businesses, you are all leaders. I pray that by 2050, in Africa, that picture is in the past. Because how is that possible that we can have one person, a speaker of parliament, having 10 cars following them, and security, and resources, and money, and fuel, and their homes paid, and their children paid, but we cannot afford a classroom for those children? So, as I said, it is the challenge of leadership. And the education challenge is only going to be met if, one, we have visionary leaders that want to drive change, who are not selfish to think about having an entourage of cars and millions of cars and leave out our brothers and sisters who one day we could find a cure for cancer. Leaders who are driven by the foresight, rooted in their communities, and understand the unique challenges and opportunities of investing in education. Two, we must have local empowerment, effective leaders who are able to empower their communities and foster a sense of ownership and involvement in education reforms. Ladies and gentlemen, if education only is done or policies are made by the people in power, not involving our communities, not involving local leaders, not involving the students themselves of what kind of education they need to be, then education will forever be a challenge on the continent. So for me, I see it as an idea of collective leadership. We must have people who would never sit on the table. Parents, children, teachers, doctors, engineers, bring them in and say, what kind of education, as we formulate this policy, can work for our country, can work for our continent. Number three, innovation and adaptability. We must have the education system that is able to adapt to changes. For example, climate change is here for now. And at Teach for Uganda, we are the only organization, and I stepped down this April, by the way. We are the only, and someone is reading it, we are the only organization now that has a climate education curriculum that is going through our 190 school communities to empower our young people to understand that I have a stake in the way climate change affects us and the next generation. So we need leaders who are able to not only have the foresight to look ahead and think quickly, galvanize people, resources, partners, and bring innovations in education that are adaptable, enhance learning, and especially in those underserved areas. We must build coalitions to ensure that networks, like Teach for All, the network I work for today, that we are able to work together, because there's no single silver bullet that can solve the challenge of education on the continent unless we work together. Lastly, on this idea of leadership, sustained commitment. We need leaders who are persistent to find solutions, who care deeply that this challenge can be solved. And they are willing to invest their resources. They are willing to call partners from across the globe, from private sector, public sector, NGOs, and work together to chart a way forward for education for all children in our continent. Now, I was asked about the challenge of addressing this idea of teacher shortages. I believe that the challenge of teacher shortages, for instance, is also a leadership one. Why? Because, for example, in Uganda now, 5,000 teachers applied for early age retirement. That is before they turn 60 or 65. 5,000 that will leave all those gaps. Why? Because they don't get paid well. 2, they don't feel supported. They don't have healthcare for their children. And number 3, they don't feel like, education really cares about them. So I want to flip the page. Instead of having a ballooning parliament of 500 parliamentarians who are really driving, everyone has an SUV, let's have 300 of them, 200 or 300 of them, and then invest all that money in our teachers and see how that will change the game. Invest that in the teachers' professional development, continuous training, training in technology. Oh, we were the first ones, by the way, as a partner organization of government in public education to bring the first of its kind technology edutech in some of the most rural communities. This is for public education, by the way, not private education. I hope you understand that. We are the first one who brought the civil society organization, NGO, and I'm sure in Teach for Nigeria, you will know, my colleague Folawe has done the same. NGO in Uganda, partner with government, partner with global philanthropy to bring digital learning to a classroom where there was no electricity, no power, no clean water. We've been providing that in over 50 schools where children are learning with a projector using solar technology. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what I believe leadership does. Leadership looks at where the challenge is, works across the aisle, whether it's private sector, public sector, civil society, and brings leaders together to ensure we address the challenge at hand. And leadership is not selfish. It finds ways of meeting people where they are and not only about themselves or their own family. And of course, that speaks about partnership. We must seek partners. We partner with about 10 universities across Uganda who bring the research, the innovations, the cutting edge, including in universities, including my own university, Florida State University, USAID, the embassies, to ensure that we have all what it takes to deliver quality education for our children. So friends, how do we design inclusive education systems? We must address the needs of the education systems and that accommodates diverse learning needs while focused on decolonizing the mindsets for teachers and students. In fact, I want to take it a notch further. We must first decolonize our own minds about education. For the last 5 decades, in Africa, education was done unto us. We found that the British had brought education, the missionaries had brought education, whoever had brought education. No. We never really thought about what was the fundamental purpose of education, what was the African education before the white masters came to us, the white people came to Africa, the colonizers came to Africa. There was a form of education. Education was always about how do we understand the challenge of our community? How do we find solutions? You had our grandparents coming on a round table on a fire to educate children for how they will address challenges that will come up, how they will, kings and queens, how they will fight wars. That education there should not be abandoned to the so-called modern education. We should train ourselves, the policymakers, the teachers, the students, that we can have both. We can merge the modern education and the cultural education so that we prepare an African who is ready, both in mind, heart, and spirit, to deliver for the continent. You know the reason why our leaders go up and they become, at the end of the day, you meet dictators, you hear people driving millions of cars and millions of monies and all this, and they are not caring about the people on the ground? It is because they don't have that intrinsic motivation, that cultural understanding, that by robbing from the children in the communities, deep down in the rural communities, I rob from myself, I rob from what we call Ubuntu or Ubuntu. I rob from myself because I am, only because we are. So the point of community engagement is very self-explanatory now, I hope so, because we must engage the communities that be and involve them in what education should look like. I want to rush this so that we can reach a point where you can ask questions. So how do we do it? And how do we do it sustainably? One, I have shared with you that there is no single silver bullet that will address the challenge of education, especially that education for all children in rural communities in Africa, in Malawi, in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, in Botswana, in Kenya, in Southern and Northern Sudan. We must be able to work together, public-private partnerships, bring people together on a table and create a sustainable way by reshaping the infrastructure, training teachers, bringing leaders in the system, have researchers at the university who are thinking about how do we innovatively change education, incorporate things like, for instance, financial education, which we never have, climate education, technology education, women and gender parity education, because right now, we can no longer live in a world where the women are still in the villages, grinding on the stones. They are here. They are our lawyers, doctors, engineers. I am married to a doctor. They are the, soon we may even see a first female president of the United States. So we can no longer be living in the past, ladies and gentlemen. Innovative financing. We must find ways of finding people. Let me just take a step back here. Please forgive me. Leaders, when you ask them on the continent, the policy leaders I've met, from ministers and others, they always say, well, there's no money. When we're writing a proposal to the government to fund our fellows, Teach for Uganda fellows, most of them were teachers from university who wanted to change the game. Some were engineers who were teaching, engineering education, robotics and others. No money. Then you ask, where will the money come from? But there is money to drive SUVs. There is money to have 1 million mansions a mansion for each MP, member of parliament. Where is the money? So I am suggesting that we can explore education bonds, impact investing, philanthropic funding, partnerships, even to the point where President Kagame, I think if you're from Rwanda, you would know this, where has created a program where Rwandans themselves give a certain percentage of their income towards solving the challenges of their own country. There's a name for it, I'm forgetting it. So we could even say, for every Ugandan who earns money, let's put 1% of your money towards improving education, improving healthcare. And of course, we can only do that if it's not corrupted, if it's not taken away and eaten. Because only way people can trust you with those resources is when it's actually going to the right thing. So that's where the challenge remains. Again, it remains the challenge of leadership. Leadership that is moral, leadership that is ethical, leadership that is transparent, leadership that is accountable. Thank you, gentlemen. Domestic resource mobilization. That is one of the examples I wanted to mention here. So I hope that makes sense. That's how we can actually chart a way forward for sustainable development in education. SDG 4 that allows leaders to lead, that allows kids to be educated and get to achieve their potential, that gives athletes and runners and players of football and others and have places where they can play, parks for kids, things that I dream of that I've never seen on the continent, except maybe in South Africa and Ghana and Senegal and some of the places and Nairobi. Things that we dream of, that we see in the West and we admire. Why can't they be for the continent? Is it lack of resources? No. To this day, we are providing more gold, diamond, coltan, and many other things that make the iPhones. How come we cannot find resources to fund our own education? So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to end with this quote. The gentleman I admire, one day, I have dreams of, always stepping in his shoes, and why I get motivated is Kofi Annan. He said, education is a human right. In fact, we should stop thinking about this idea of education as it is a human right with immense power. When you hear his words, he says immense power to transform. On its foundation, the basis, the foundation, rests the cornerstones of freedom that we all seek, democracy, and human sustainable development. I could not have said, I don't know, I can't say it any better. On its foundation rests the cornerstones of freedom. We all see wars happening everywhere. If people cannot learn to know my brother, whether in Nigeria or Zimbabwe or Zambia is my brother, then we shall have to fight each other. When we go back to our colonial mindsets of divide and rule, then there's no freedom, there's no democracy, and of course, there's no human development. So in Swahili, they say asante sana, and thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kasanga. My God, this has been an amazing conversation. I just wish we had a more wider community to hear this, because personally, I resonate with almost everything you have said, and I want to say thank you, sir. Thank you. This has been an amazing and powerful conversation. You really, really did carry everyone along, especially myself. I could just imagine your experience personally, all that you went through. But one thing I noticed was the fact that you had a burden, your intentionality, and you were concerned about your community. Obviously, the Africa that we want to see starts with us. It really does start with us. We are grateful, sir. As we move on, Mr. Kasanga, I would love to ask a question before we dive into the roundtable discussion, because I know that our amazing participants have one or two questions, and we might not be able to take all questions, but I want to ask you this question, sir. In regards to all you have said, because I remember you talked about collaboration, the grassroots, involving the community leaders, talk about collaboration, and then the intentionality that those in the low-income communities, they need to be carried along. Just like the SDGs, the goal is that nobody is left behind. So, Mr. Kasanga, my question is this. In talking about sustainability and inclusive education, what would you say is the position of Africa in the global space, and what is that major work we need to do? I know we are trying. Yes, we are trying all over. We're doing our best. What is that major thing that you would say regarding what you have told us today? I believe every participant here will, go back and hear this good news you have dished out for us, and we are grateful. So what would you say is the role of Africans in the global community in terms of sustainability and inclusive education?
Thank you, my sister, for that fantastic question. I mean, the role of Africa is actually so tangential. I don't know the right English word, but it's so fundamental. Think about it. Some of you who are still in the youthful age, 25 and under. Africa today has 20% Africa's youth are 20% of the entire global population. Africa's youth are 20% of the entire global population. Think about it. It means if we invest, and youth is between, you know, the age is between 14 and 25, or you can even extrapolate it, whatever part, but looking at 25. If we invest well, both public, private, philanthropy, private sector, and businesses think about, because one thing I used to challenge businesses back in Uganda, the telecoms, the others, to invest, I always told them, if you want a workforce that is educated, smart, delivering, well experienced, you cannot wait for them at your office. You must invest in them now so that 10 years, you will see those guys come out. So I always challenge them, invest now, whether it was MTN, Airtel, I took proposals, I did everything. We had one company that was fantastic, and I will have to mention it's a global company, DHL. DHL, you have seen it. It invested, even today as I speak, yesterday they had a wonderful forum for young people in Kampala and across DHL. So I always challenged businesses in my TV interviews and all told them, you must invest in education. You cannot sit and complain and say, oh, the continent, things are not working. I've had some of the oil companies, and I will not mention them, complaining, oh, the talent is not good in Uganda. We must bring expatriates. Well, how do you expect the talent to be good, sirs and madams, if you're not investing in education? That's a lie. You just want to bring your own people and employ them and give them expatriate money to take home. But if I was the president of my country, I would ensure that before, and Kenya does this, by the way, I love Kenya. I love our Kenyan brothers because they are ahead in many ways on the East African region. They ensure that if you are an expatriate, 2 years within your role, you must be able to relinquish that role to a Kenyan. In Uganda, it doesn't happen. So, my sister, you asked a fundamental question. We have one of the biggest roles to play on the continent. Look at, for example, go read about Fred Swanika. There are many. Patrick Awuah of Ghana, Fred Swanika, who launched the African Leadership Academy, the African Leadership University, the Sun Technology. He is trying to, these are the guys, by the way, that inspired me to leave my education. I had jobs in America. I came back to launch Teach for Uganda. Why? Because there were those Africans who said, we are the ones who will address the challenges of our continent and actually solve them. We cannot wait for Mr. So-and-so from Europe, from America to fix them. We can work with them in partnership. That's okay. It's okay. We can partner, which is fantastic. But they must see us doing something. Recently, my last one, my wonderful friends, I had a funder. Right now, I am leading one of the fundraising campaigns to launch an accelerator to help young African entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, who are trying to innovate in education. So these are guys who are starting schools, they are starting technology companies in education. They are trying, they are doing girl education, technology education, whatever in Africa, across Africa. And one of the funders, before she even said, I want to give you the money to be able to invest. But the challenge I have is that we give you money from the West. I have not seen many Africans invest. It cannot only be us, Americans or Europeans, caring about African education. So you see, we ourselves are making it difficult for even our friends in the West to invest. So we must, young people, you who are here and in 25, 30s, whenever you get into the position of power, I hope you remember the words of Mr. Kasaga. You cannot be a hindrance. You must be part of the solution. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. That was really, really amazing. I love that. Truthfully, this has been an insightful and informative and educative session today. I want to say that this conversation will not end here, but for today, we would not overflog it. I'll leave the floor for my co-mentor, Ms. Oluwakemi, to reach out and then take over from here.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kende. Thank you, our wonderful guest speaker. Thank you for the eye-opener. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. So over to our audience, please kindly drop your questions in the chat box so that we can ask our panelists and our guest speaker the questions for more clarity. I'm going through the chat box now. Okay, thank you so much. So I have a question for our panelists, and how far has technology come in making education accessible in Africa? Please, our panelists, anyone?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Let me come in on the issue of technology in transforming the education system of Africa. To be honest, I don't think it has even gone to 10% of maybe. There are so many factors that are attached to that, and that we need to first solve before we expose technology to our learners in schools in Africa. Look at the resources, look at the materials which we need to use to teach these learners. Besides the resources and the materials, look at the teachers' professional development ethics. Are they worth really to teach technological skills to our learners? They lack such skills. Then how do you expect them to teach these learners what they don't know? When you look at the rural setup, look at, there is no power, there is no electricity. Then how do you really integrate technology in education system where there is no power in rural areas? So to digest the question down, really it has done not great, but I think it is working out in urban areas, but in rural areas, really it has not had any impact as of now. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Thank you for that explanation. I have a question here to our guest speaker. How do you think the education curriculum for African countries can best be reformed? How do you think the education curriculum for African countries can best be reformed? Over to you, sir.
So was that to me or to all panelists? But I can try and answer quickly, and then I have to jump off my friends for another call for work. But I wanted to appreciate Mr. James Mugalia's point on access to technology and how it's transforming communities. Most of the technology I know, especially that came after COVID, it was majorly by civil society organizations, NGOs, nonprofits to provide technology for rural kids learning in Africa. I don't know, maybe in South Africa and other countries, maybe there are some countries that have governments that have invested in technology. Kenya has, in some of them I saw, and also Rwanda, the leader, Mr. Kagame, has invested the 1 laptop per child, which really is trying to close out the gap, the inequitable gap in education in Rwanda. And for me, I think if you're looking at examples on the continent, other than looking at Singapore, South Korea, and others, we need to look at models like Rwanda. Yes, it's a small country, but how can we work with partners? Because also Mr. Kagame is working with partners to ensure that technology gets to all children. And then lastly, on the technology part, before I jump to the curriculum, you must also ensure that telecommunication companies, those that have access to technology and data, right? are also moving with you in those communities to have the masks, the whatever, so that people have access to internet that works. You know, even the teachers who have their phones, sometimes the internet is not working because in those deep rural communities, the internet is not working. So the ISPs, the internet service providers, must be challenged by our governments. Instead of taking bribes or instead of, you know, getting political whatever money to run for office, task them to support the process of socio-economic transformation. You know, let's not talk about it in words, but let's do. That's the only way, my brothers and sisters, that we will see technology move further. It has to be led by government leaders. Guys, come on. Policy on let me tell you an example. I've lived longer here, 40 years, so maybe I'm a bit older. A gentleman by the names of Paul Farmer, he died. He was a global icon for global health and equity across the world. He said that policy or politics are like medicine on a larger scale, on a global scale. If the policies and the politics are sick, nations, communities will be sick. So if the policies are actually good, the politics is good, it is transparent, it is accountable, it is providing the resources and the service provision, the nations are healed. And who are the nations? The communities are healed. It's the people. It's the people, guys. Let's not take education to be it's in its own. Education is for who? It's for the people. It's for our children. It's for our sisters and brothers. It's for our grandchildren. So we must get it right. One, on the curriculum end, I mentioned it. I don't want to be the one talking. We have smart, wonderful leaders here, including researchers. Again, we need to really get our highest institutions of learning. Instead of waiting for the West to come and do research for us, let them do research, first of all, evidence-based research of one, how does languages and all that and our languages and our cultures being infused in the modern education, how does it help or hurt? If the result is that it helps, then we must gear up with all the resources to ensure that we integrate languages, language curriculum, everything, culture, folk tales, whatever, into the system to ensure that all children, regardless whether you're in the cities or in the rural communities, you're learning equitably and you're learning in similar ways. But as James mentioned, before we get there, some children are in a classroom, some others are learning under a tree. So how can you do that? I'll just stop there for now. I don't want to leave you guys with the discouragement. But it is possible when we have leaders who care enough to want to get it done. Because how did Mr. Kagame get it done? Thank you. The one who is quoting, I said, if politics or policies in the country are sick, you know, then the education or any other system of that will also be sick. But if the politics and the policies are actually well, and they are delivering for the people, and they are transparent, and they are accountable, and they are not corrupt, then the people will also be well, the systems will be well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Chidima and others, I need to jump off, so can you please pardon me to jump off?
You are free, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. We're grateful.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. I am on LinkedIn. Please, let me share just to know, I need to follow up with all of you. I would love to stay in touch. So you see what I share. You can find me on LinkedIn as Kasaga. I think Ms. Chidima can share James Arena Itwe, and also on X as Kasaga 4UG. And then we can move forward together. And I look forward to seeing your work and being of support to you guys. Keep up the great work, guys. Don't give up. Young Africans, do not give up. We are waiting for, you're the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for to find the solutions for the continent. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. We are very grateful. Okay, now, so let's continue with our round table discussion. I'm yet to see any question on the chat boards. Are we saying that we are all clear about everything? We are passionate change makers. So I feel we should ask up questions.
I can see a question about somebody wanting to be a part of the SDG 4.
Okay. Our panelists answer that question.
Okay, sorry, it all depends. I don't understand. If you also want to be an advocate for SDG 4 or want to learn about SDG 4, you need to get that right. Please.
Okay, you can explain if the person wants to be an advocate or want to learn about SDG 4, what it entails. So you can just give a brief summary of what SDG 4 is all about and how you can be an advocate. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Let me just remind that my fellows can continue with that. So, Africans, like, I think the best thing for us is to go through these fellowships, because as an advocate, as a student, as a fellow, this is one of the main aspects, the smooth aspect for us to learn. So if you want to learn, you need to go out there. As we said, we have this digital economy. We have you can learn online. But for you to know the best resources, the best toolkit for you to learn about quality education, and I won't just say learn about SDG 4. You need to learn about the rest of the SDGs under SDG 4. But if you want to learn how you can advocate for quality education, sustainable education, you can always work as a community-based volunteer. Volunteerism is the best part, because through volunteer, you'll be able to learn, be able to take part through practical approach in school. So first of all, if you have a community, it's either online or offline, try as much as possible to join a community in your locality or your area. You can search. We have the LinkedIn. We have different groups online. You can just Google SDG 4 and Google volunteer or organization offering fellowships, offering training, offering mentorship. And if you have schools, because that is the best place you can practice, because we have the very aspect, we have the community in practice. So if you want to learn more about quality education, I would advise, first of all, to learn from different fellowships within you or online. Then second aspect is to go through any person. You can just go to any school. I will advise you to go into public school, because that's the best place you can volunteer, because this is where we want to try as much as possible to build sustainable and equitable education. So if you want to volunteer, I'm not saying the private schools or the urban area school, no. But what we want to do is to be a change maker, to be a champion for those who are less privileged, who are underdeserved, who are marginalized. So if you are going to go into that practical approach, the best place you can provide your service as an advocate, I would advise to go into the rural area or the marginalized area. But the best thing for us is to you need to have that education, you need to have that awareness. And the best place you can do that is to look for communities, look for fellowships or organizations to work with to volunteerism. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, I have a question here, and I want any of the panelists to answer this question. What are the roles of classroom teachers in achieving sustainable quality education? That is, what are those roles, those things they need to put in place as a classroom teacher in order to achieve sustainable quality education? Over to you, the panelists. Mr. Francis.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I would like to say that teachers have a great role to play in bringing on board sustainability and inclusivity in education. And this one, they can do that by one, making sure that their teaching pedagogies and methodologies are in line with the 21st century standards that are needed. They also need to make sure that they have accommodated all learners from the diverse cultural backgrounds, may it be ethnic, may it be religious, socio-economic status, so that now we move together. Again, they need to be very good in improvising and innovative in bringing on board many technologies and innovative techniques to make sure that maybe instead of waiting for learning materials to be purchased by parents, they can also innovate and tell the learners ways of coming up with those materials themselves. By so doing, we are going to empower those learners to make sure that now they are in line with what we need as a community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. I think I'm just going to Miss Kende Obafemi, should I still ask another question?
Okay,
Or
for the purpose
we'll
of
take over?
time,
Okay.
yes. So
Let's take over
everyone,
then. Thank you.
yes, for the purpose of time, we would have loved to ask another question, but we do not have that much time. And if we're going to do, we would not really be overflogging. Okay, Mr. Francis, you want to say something?
Yes, before maybe we round off everything, I think, again, we need to have a look at the biggest challenge itself in Africa is about the access of quality education. And what are we doing as a continent in terms of infrastructure? What Dr. Kasanga has talked about. What the teacher shortage in Africa, the economic barrier in Africa. What are we doing as a continent? Because if you look at, for example, I was reading somewhere, Malawi, the teacher-learner ratio in class. Here in Kenya, the teacher-learner ratio is 1 to almost 100 learners in class. In Malawi, we get almost one teacher handling almost 130 learners in class, and in many other countries in Africa. What are we doing? Another question as I finish up, again, as a coordinate, we find that it's only South Africa that has engaged itself in international organizations. For example, the Program for International Student Assessment, the progress in international reading, literacy, and study, trends in international mathematics, science study. Is only in Africa that we get those countries. The BRICS, that has only 5 countries. What is holding the African countries back not to engage in those international organizations that are helping to upskill to raise the academic profile in our continent, Africa? There's a lot that must be done so that now we better education in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. I can see Mr. James. Please, just 1 minute, please. 1 minute, Mr.
Okay.
James. Over to you.
Let me just throw more light in 1 minute, then we round up this. I thank Mr. Francis for his contribution, but I think still factor is to leadership, because when you look at leadership, every sector and every institution, it is not only access to education, but the quality of education. Is it there? It is not there. How can you access what is not there? So look at the gender inequalities. Some girls are at home, others are not studying. So the African education is set up and we don't know, but the issue is one. Let's put our leadership right, then everything, I think, will get to normal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Over to you, Miss Kendi. Please take over.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I am so excited that it was an amazing conversation. We all were able to hear what our guest speaker said, Mr. Kasanga, and also our beautiful panelists. I want to believe that this is not going to end here. We are all going to take back every value that we have received from this conversation to our community and even to people around us. Having said that, I really want to appreciate every single individual that left whatever they were doing to be part of our workshop series. And I know that in regards to our conversation, we will know that individually, we are all ambassadors of inclusive and sustainable education in Africa. So it does not just start with the community, but it starts with you and me. I want to say thank you to everyone. We are grateful. We'll continue the conversations on our social media platform. Thank you so much, and bye-bye. Before we do that, if you know your camera is clear and you want to on your camera for a little snapshot, for a little snapshot, you can on your camera before we say bye-bye. The camera is on. Let's all have our cameras on so we can have a little snapshot. Okay. Thank you so much.
There is a question that someone has asked there, not responded to, being the last one. I think you can address that one about politics.
To answer that question, I am so sorry. I am really, really sorry. We can actually have further conversation outside of this meeting because of our time. We are really trying our best to keep up to time. So sorry, Mr. Daniel. You can actually reach out to us and follow the ADEF page on LinkedIn so that you can ask further questions. We are so sorry about that. My sincere apologies, but we need to go now. Thank you so much for your understanding. But we would not want to overflow time so that we don't keep other people waiting in case they are trying to attend to other personal issues or pressing issues. I am really sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. So without further ado, we need to say goodbye and thank you once again. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Wrapping us.